This is episode 51, Interview Valet, helping brands, businesses, and inspiring thought leaders reach their ideal customers with Tom Schwab.
Can you remember a time you failed? A time you were so close to your goal but it all came crashing down? We've all been there. But why does this happen? Why do we sometimes fail when we attempt to scale? Here's the secret. In order to grow your business and expand your mind, you need a controlled environment, like a plant growing in a greenhouse. It's my mission to help experts and entrepreneurs grow rapidly by leveraging outside resources and unlocking universal wisdom. But the question is, how will they do it? Join me on this epic journey as we monetize our passions, scale our businesses, and master eternal abundance. My name is Civitarese, and this is the Growth Podcast.
This is the Growth Podcast. My name is Civitarese, and today I'm sitting down with Tom Schwab. He's the Chief Evangelist Officer over at Interview Valet, and I am excited for this interview here. Tom, welcome to the Growth Podcast.
Aaron, I am thrilled to be here.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for taking time. I love what you're doing. We were chatting before jumping on here, and I'm very excited to talk about this with you because this is perfect here. So I'm looking forward to it. Thanks so much for jumping on. Tom, before we jump in too far, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I prove that you can do podcasts from anywhere. I'm in Kalamazoo, Michigan, halfway between Chicago and Detroit. It's like, yes, it really exists. Graduated from the United States Naval Academy. My first job out of college was running nuclear power plants. I've done the corporate job. I've done the entrepreneurship. And, my biggest thing is today there are a lot of problems in the world. But there is no better time to be alive, right? With the tools that we have, with the opportunities that we have, I just have to remind myself and pinch myself that this is a great time to be alive.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, 10, 15 years ago, the presidents of countries and kings and queens of nations didn't have what we have today as far as technology, connectivity, networking abilities, information at our fingertips. Is the best time to be alive. It's absolutely amazing. And this is a testament. Podcasting, networking, meeting people all around the world, no matter where you are, what you're doing, you can connect with people. And that's what we're doing here today. So this is very cool. So Tom, this is right up my alley, obviously podcasting. I talk about this all day with you. So I'm excited to pick your brains, but let's take it back a little ways. I mean, podcasting, I don't think your entrepreneurial career started with podcasting, did it? So take us back into your earlier years, sort of a little bit of background, a little bit about Tom and sort of what piqued your interest to go down that road.
Yeah, and to me, I think podcasts are just the flavor of the day, right? In 1920, radio was called wireless telegraph. And it wasn't until 1930 that it was radio. I think somebody, we're recording this in 2020. There's somebody going to listen to this in 2030 and laugh and go, they're still calling it podcast then, right? To me, it's conversations, it's connections. To me, the richness of your life is the richness of your relationships. And I grew up in the Midwest, a suburb of Chicago. My life was really small. I'd never really been more than 100 miles from any place. And while it was nice, it was small. And once I went into the Navy, my world expanded, different ideas. And I can still remember moving back to Kalamazoo, Michigan, and I got offered the job. And on a snowy February day, I literally told them, Aaron, I told them, I'll take the job, but I'm not dying in this place because I didn't want to be insulated again. And I think today, with all of the connection we have, you can have that anywhere. And so for me, I've seen throughout my entire life, I've liked to meet people, be exposed to new ideas, to connect people. To this day, my mom doesn't understand what I do. I wrote a book. I actually gave her the book. She read it and she says, honey, I still don't understand what you do, but I'm proud of you. And I'm like, Mom, I introduce people that should know each other. And that's really that's the mission of our company, Interview Valet, to personally introduce inspiring thought leaders to millions of individuals they could serve for the betterment of all. Nowhere in there does it say podcast. It's all about introducing people and ideas. And so my mom, I told her that, and she just smiled, and I'm sure she's still telling all of her friends that I'm an engineer because that's easier to understand. But I guess my epitaph, if they described me through what I did my entire life, I'm just a connector. I like connected people.
Yeah, absolutely. And with technology nowadays, connecting has never been easier. Hey, the old 6 degrees of separation. What do you think about that in the new age?
We've got a client of ours, and he's a cybersecurity analyst. And he actually shared with me the other day, the new number is 3.2 degrees of separation.
I love it.
And they were using it to solve crimes, right? Because you're 3.2 degrees of separation from any victim or any perpetrator. And so I look at that today and say, well, today, if you're isolated or ignorant, it's largely by choice. Right. Granted, there's some people in certain parts of the world that aren't as blessed as we are. But for, most of the first world, you can connect with anybody. You can learn anything. Heck, you don't even have to live in Cambridge to take courses at Harvard. Just go online there. The courses are there.
Yeah, everything's at our fingertips now. There's really no excuse, is there? There's really no excuse. You can't even come up with an excuse because it's in your phone, right? It's crazy. Yeah, it's interesting. 3 degrees. That's, to me, I get extremely excited when I hear that, because that's something I always think about as well. It's like, oh, you're so close to everybody. You can just, introduce this person to that person. All of a sudden, boom, you have a connection to someone that you would never think you could even get close to. But all of a sudden now you're in the Zoom conference call with the same faces on the screen. It happens to me all the time these days. And I'm like, whoa, what's happening? Look at this. Look who's here. This is crazy. I was just chatting with my mom the other day. I'm here at my family home where I grew up visiting. And I was chatting with her about a person that I was like, look at this person here. And I was pointing at it and I explained who it was. And I said, there's no way 5-10 years ago you could be in a meeting with these people. You'd have to go to the conference room. You'd have to be in the loop. You'd have to be literally in the company, and you'd have to go to C-suite, and you'd have to get in there and talk. Instead, we're all sitting around virtually having a meeting, talking about mindset and smashing limiting beliefs. And these are, multi-million-dollar CEOs and things that are just sitting at home having a conversation. I love the fact that we can do this now. I feel like the world is expanding at an exponential rate because of it. Right. And it's guys like you and companies like yourself that are just helping add fuel to that. So that's just absolutely amazing. Hey.
When you think about it, everybody on that call is thinking the same thing. It's like, what's ordinary to you is amazing to other people. And we do a lot of podcast book tours. So when somebody has a book that comes out, a new author, instead of going to every Barnes and Noble, they'll just go on a dozen or 2 dozen podcast interviews months before the book comes out. And, there have been times where I want to do a screen share and just share it with people. I'm like, this is what I did today. We did a book tour for a Hall of Fame Major League Baseball player. And I'm on a call with him and his wife, and they're at their home, right? And like, this is cool. Another one, Eric Weinheimer, the first blind man to summit Mount Everest. He was on Time Magazine. We did his book tour. And it's like, it's just like anybody else on a Zoom call. And I think especially now through this, the challenges we go through now, we realize that we've got more in common than we've got different, right? Everybody's at home. Everybody's trying to do the call from their home or quiet place. And I think it brings us together a lot more, where we don't all have studios that we work out of. Yes, I completely agree. I'm seeing that very clearly these days. Their authenticity is shining through, and people are becoming more vulnerable, even if they don't want to be. Like, usually the person who's very prim and proper and shiny in their studio, all of a sudden now is at home with the kid crying in the background. But it brings their audience closer to them because they're more relatable, right? I feel like the people that are leveraging is a strong word to use, but the people who are actually using this to their advantage right now are gaining leaps and bounds as far as taking market share, if you want to go down that road, because their audience is becoming more in tune with them as a person. And now in the future, when the world gets back to normal after this COVID is over, we're recording this in April 2020. When this COVID is over and business as usual starts up again, the people who were putting themselves out there being vulnerable and showing their real side, their client base and their customer base is going to be that much more attracted to them. Right. And so this is the power of podcasting, or whatever you want to call it in the future, 20, 30 listeners.
This is the power of communication and networking, right? This is the whole thing. It's very cool. So as you're building your business here and connecting people, Interview Valet, it's a very cool business model. I have a lot of questions around the monetization side of it and how you help people build actual businesses through it. Mm-hmm. But let's talk a little bit about yourself first as the chief evangelical officer of this beautiful company. When you were coming up with it, I don't know if you have co-founders or whatever, when you were developing the business, what was your big vision, your overall vision? What was the motivation behind this? I know you love connecting people, but what was the main purpose of the actual business itself? How did you come about that?
All right. Now I've got to be totally transparent here. I had just built up an e-commerce business and sold it off. And we had done it through inbound marketing, using content to attract, engage, and delight. And the hack that we used 15 years ago was guest blogging. Instead of blogging on my own site and having 3 people read it, I'll put the blog up on where other people are, tapping into other people's platforms. So built that business up, sold it off. And then I was in my sabbatical phase and didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I did not want to build an agency. But I had this thought that I wonder if you could use podcast interviews much like we used to use guest blogs. So I was in a mastermind group with some guys down in Nashville, and they asked, hey, could you help me, with my digital marketing? Sure, I got time. I'll do that. So we started to test this, and I was shocked. We saw conversion rates of visitors to leads that were 25 times better than we saw on blogs. And at first I'm like, it's got to be a personality. It's got to be a niche. Kept testing it, and it worked really well. And so more people asked me about it, Aaron. And so I put together this cheesy PDF book that I just kept giving away. And somebody said, well, you should put a video course together on this. And I'm like, oh, okay, I can do that. Right? It sold well, but I never took it out of beta. After about 2 months, I just shut it down. Because what people told me was that, you gave me the book, you gave me the cookbook, you gave me the videos, but I don't want to be the chef. I want you to do it and let me be the guest. And I just didn't want to sell a course just to sell a course if people weren't getting results out of it. So sort of kicking and screaming, I'm like, okay, we'll test it to see if it works out. And that was the fall of 2015. We beta tested it. And by the spring of 2016, I was even amazed. It's like, this really, really works. It's working for authors and coaches and brands. And I was just having fun with it. So we launched the business. Now we've grown to 18 team members, serving about 100 clients. And so early on, it's like raising a child. You do everything. Now it's grown to the point where I've got a great leadership team. I've got people that know their jobs better than and do their jobs better than I ever would. So a lot of times my role is to give them some leadership, to set the directions, and then go out there and evangelize for the company, for our customers, and for podcasting.
Yeah, evangelize. I love it. Yeah, very, very cool. So you took your past experience and you kept going with what you knew best. That's an important lesson, I think, in there. Just kind of on a side note, you kind of doubled down on what you knew the market was craving, right, and what you were good at, right?
I always say that I'm not the smartest person in the world. And, if you ask a business owner about their business, they've got an opinion. You can hire a consultant and they have an opinion too, but it's the customers that have the answer. And it was the customers who were telling me what they loved and what they loathed, right? So I had this great idea in my mind what it was supposed to be. But then I found out that no, they didn't want just a video course. They just didn't want a book. They wanted me to do the done for you service. So I think if you want to call it a Forrest Gump smart, maybe that's what I've been. If I hear the answers enough times, I'll recognize it. And that's really what we've been doing, just following what our customers have asked for and what podcasters have asked for.
Yeah. Exactly. So, well, that begs the question, what are they asking for? What's the market looking for out there?
More and more interesting stories. It's not just the big name people with the talking points, but give me somebody that's interesting, somebody that's got something that's timely to talk about, but also timeless. Someone that can talk about their scars, what they've learned, not necessarily their wounds, right? Get some perspective on that. And the other thing too is that, for all of us, what's ordinary to you is amazing to others. So, help them share that of their expertise. And then both the host and the guest are saying, just make it easy, right? Staples had the best one with the easy button. Everybody just wants the easy button. So for the podcast host, they're saying, we like working with Interview Valet because you make it easy to say yes to one of our guests, right? They show up on time, prepared with professional equipment. The host gets sent beforehand a brief sheet on them, a bio, all the artwork, everything like that, so they can just have a great conversation. And even the same thing for our guests. They're like, make it easy for me. Make it easy for me to get in front of the right podcast. There's a million podcasts now. Find the ones for me that make a difference. Prepare me for the interview. Only kids and clowns like surprises. None of our clients are that, right? So we prepare them for each interview so they know who the host is, who the guest is, or who the audience is, what they talk about, all their social media links. Is the video going to be on or not? We take care of all of those details so that both the host and the guest can just show up and have a great conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's completely true. And also, just again, you coming into my world as the podcast host, we were discussing a bit earlier, for those of you watching the videos, it's funny not having like my own office and stuff now. I literally have little headphones going and everything, but the show must go on, as they say. And if the content is valuable, at the end of the day, authenticity wins, right? So it is what it is. That's the way I see it. But it's also very important for both sides of the coin to be professional in this manner, on time, understand who each other are and all that. And I just have to say kudos to you and your team, because our relationship from the beginning, from our email correspondence back and forth with your assistant and everything, it was extremely clear and crisp and concise, which was very nice and honestly refreshing as a podcast host to receive that sort of information up front. So I can completely resonate with what you're saying. That makes complete sense. And I can understand why your services are in such high demand, right? For sure. It's very cool. Yeah. So turning listeners into leads and customers. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not like we're always here to sell something to somebody. It's really about bringing value and everything. But at the end of the day, of course, the way you impact is by sharing your experiences with people and generally exchanging money for it. Right. So let's talk a little bit about that. How do you help your clients sort of monetize their passionate podcast experience, or how does that look?
And so a lot of times I'll have people say, do you get paid to talk on a podcast? And I'm like, if you don't get paid anywhere to talk, you're doing something wrong, right? Whether or not it's a stage or a podcast. And by getting paid, I always say, are you helping people? Right? There's a great book out there, Rabbi Daniel Lapin. I'm not Jewish, but I love the book. And he talks about money being certificates of appreciation. And that if you're serving people, they give you money. And so we always tell our clients that, your goal of being on a podcast is to give value, right? There's a great quote out there by Rand Fishkin from Moz. He's up in Seattle area there. And he said, the best way to sell something today is not to sell anything, but to earn the respect, awareness, and trust of those who might buy. So that's what you're doing on a podcast interview. You're earning the respect, awareness, and trust of those who might buy. If you do a good job, you don't have to promote yourself. The host will promote you better than you ever do. And I always say there's, 3 types of people that hear me on a podcast interview. The first ones are the ones that say, Tom is an idiot. And I'm like, that's fine with me, right? If that's what they believe, God love them. I know we won't work well together, but I hope they get something out of it, right? The other ones are like, that was interesting, but I don't see how I could use podcast guesting, but maybe I could forward this on to somebody else. Fine. Really, the ones you want to talk to, and not so much sell, but just talk to, have a conversation with, are those ones that have the problem, that are like the people that you work with, the ones that say, wow, that was interesting. Interview Valet works with people like me. They've had success with people like me. Tom's a little quirky, but I like him. I want to work with them. Those are the people you want to connect with. So I think that's where the monetization comes into. Exposure brings opportunity, and that opportunity can look different in so many ways. It can be sales, it can be JV partnerships, it can be the backlinks that come from podcast interviews, it can be the social media following, really depending on what's most important to the guest.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's really endless, right? It's endless, and bringing the value is the key, because at the end of the day, people, they learn through stories, right? And they also want to learn something. The key word is learn. They want to learn something, learn and entertainment. That's what they're here for, right? So, yeah, I love it. It's awesome. It's really cool. So what would you say to maybe a podcaster who's not a podcaster yet, or a networker, communicator person who's like, I would like to put myself out there. I would love to communicate with people. I wish I had a platform, like, what would you tell that person who's listening right now who might kind of be lost but curious?
There's something that came out about 500,000 podcasts ago where they said, everybody needs a podcast. I'm like, no, not everybody needs a podcast, right? There's something in this industry called pod fade. Right now, there's over 1 million podcasts on iTunes. The little asterisk next to it, though, is there's about 350 that have actually published in the last 30 days. So it's really easy to start. It's hard to keep it going. So I would start with them and just say, why? Why do you want to do this? It's almost like, why do you want to run a marathon? You better have a good answer, because somewhere in the training, you're going to get tired and say, this is stupid. And so with the podcast, well, why do you want to do it? I want to meet people. That's a great answer. So set that you're going to do it at least for a year. I want to interview people in my industry. That's a great one. I want to share what I know. That's a great one. Often people will say, should I be a guest or a host? And with that, I always look and say, that's like asking, should I be an Uber driver or an Uber passenger, right? It's the same platform. It's a great platform, but what are your goals? So if your goals are to get new exposure, get new leads, then be a guest. If your goal is to nurture your current leads, nurture your current relationships, then be a host. And I don't think it has to be an either or. But if you've got a why behind it, the technology is no longer a factor. We talked before that, it's so easy now that you can do it from anywhere. And it's really just the why to keep it going.
Yeah. Understanding your why in anything in life, like a marathon, for example, it's the key to success, really, because you will want to quit at some point. You're going to have that pain and that, the roller coaster that you go on in the entrepreneurial journey, especially, right? The whole up and down, up and down. If you have a destination that you're going towards, you know why you're going there. A lot of people think of their family. They think of a better life for their loved ones. They think of these things. If you can hold that in your heart, and that's actually what your soul is calling you to do, you get through that pain, right? You'll keep publishing. You'll keep showing up to do the work. It's like, I was an athlete back in the day, and I knew my why. And that was why I would get up at 6 a.m. and run in the dark every day, because I knew I wanted to be in the Olympics one day. Never made it, but that wasn't the point. I knew I wanted to, so I got out of bed every day, right? That was the whole thing. Podcasting is no different. And for sure, people come and go like anything, right? People love to start and quit. But the beauty is, with a service like yours, it's giving you the platform, and it's giving you the ability to connect on a professional level, which I think a lot of people get stuck with, right? They get hung up with, where do I get guests from? How do I connect? How can we actually show up and know what we're talking about? Like, there's a lot going on there. It's not as simple as people think. But with a service like yours, that elevates their game right away, and it puts them on a level that brings in higher level guests and connects people on a higher level, and it'll give them better results, which will give them longevity as to their purpose, right?
And faster results, and it'll be more fun, right? Yeah. When you start with a podcast, you're like, I want to be a podcaster. You don't think of all the work that goes in there, that I want to, find guests. I want to have to reach out to guests. I want to have to vet guests, all the rest of this. Whereas we just make it easy for the host to say, yeah, If Interview Valet has brought them to us, they're vetted, they've got the equipment, all of that. Or if you're coming on as a guest to get on other shows, there's 3 types of people that hosts want on their podcasts. The first one's their friends. The second one is friends of friends. And the third one is people they want to be their friends. So we really come in sort of as that friend of friend, right? The host knows Interview Valet. They know the kind of people we work with. And so if we vouch for them, they'll give them a chance on the podcast.
Yeah, I see. I got you there. Yeah, that's important. Yeah, vetting people is important for sure. Cool. So in building this business, just on an entrepreneurial side of things, you're obviously an entrepreneur. You're building business regardless of what it is for. What kind of struggles have you come along, that a lot of the people listening, they could be building online these days. You have a lot of affiliate marketers. You have people over here in the direct sales niche. You have people over here building agencies, right? You have people over here doing X, Y, Z. Everybody essentially entrepreneurship is becoming sexy. Let's admit it. It's becoming sexy. And when that happens, a lot of people jump in and they kind of drown because they don't realize, oh my God, 40 hours a week was a coast compared, like a 9 to 5, 40-hour a week job is like a coast versus 80 hours a week entrepreneurship, especially when you're starting, right? So startups and things like this are always a challenge. So talking a little bit about that journey and any thoughts or advice you have for any entrepreneurs out there listening that are in the growth mode.
I've done this twice now, and one was an e-commerce business, which I always consider like building a machine. You build the machine and then you just run it. And now with Interview Valet, it's more of a service-based business. It's a human-based business. And they were so different, right? So the e-commerce business, it was building it up, building the systems. It was more of an engineering feat than it was a HR or a personal. It was more of an IQ, intelligence quotient than an emotional quotient, the EQ. And so with that, being an ex-engineer, the e-commerce side was really easy, right? To set that up and figure all of that out. And when I started this, somebody gave me advice, and it was Drew McClellan from the Agency Marketing Institute, Agency Management Institute. And he said, when you build a business that is highly dependent on people, he said, it's more like raising a child than it is building an engine. And that struck me. And I looked back on that so many times. Early on, I had to do everything, right? It's like having a newborn child. You're up in the middle of the night. There's accidents, and it's fun at the beginning. Then it gets tiring. And then they start to have more independence. And just about the time you think you're making progress, you take a step back, or they fall and they hurt themselves. But you've got to let them grow. You've got to challenge them. You've got to support them. And he said, at a certain point, you're going to get to it when your company's going to be like teenagers in the driveway, where it's like, Dad, would you get out of the driveway and can I have the keys so I can get on with my life? And that's been a struggle. And I know a lot of people wish that they could go back to the early times with their team. They want to do everything. Well, you can't do that. You can't raise a child and do everything for them forever. So I've loved every stage of the business, and every new stage I've liked even more. And now, fast forward, 6 years, we've got the processes down, we've got the team in place, and it's just so great to hear a team member say, don't worry, I got this. Or to have somebody else like a host come in and say, they are so great. Jamie is always awesome. It's like somebody complimenting your kids, right? It's like, I have no idea what she did. I have no idea where she learned that from, but I get credit for it. So yes, thank you. So I think all entrepreneurship is not the same, and look at what business model you're in, because it can be drastically different.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I like the analogy of raising a kid. That's true. Yeah, it's true. What strikes me there is the discipline and the things that, I don't have kids, so it's hard for me to say. We're having kids soon, though. I'm excited about that. But having kids and instilling discipline, but then letting them run a bit, it's like telling, your staff, and I've managed teams before offline. It's like you give them tasks and SOPs and stuff, but then you also empower them to make decisions, right? So it's a similar sort of thing as a kid, like, don't pick up that thing and do that, but you can, and you'll learn your lesson kind of thing. And then we'll make a switch after that, right? Something like this.
Right. Well, I think one of the things we're learning from this remote experience is there's certain people that need to be managed, right? They have to be, and I think our education system sets this up too. They have to be told what they do. They have to be supervised. They do well in an office cubicle environment. That's not the people I want to hire, right? I don't like managing people. To me, it's like babysitting, right? I want to lead people. I want people that can manage themselves. So I think that's one of those things to look at too, is as an entrepreneur, do you want to manage people or lead people? Because it's different. And so to find the right people. Some of the people on my leadership team are great managers. They do that so I don't have to do it. And especially if you're doing a remote team, I think you need to have a lot of people that are more self-motivated and self-managed, because it's just not as easy to manage a team remotely, but it's a whole lot more powerful to lead one remotely. I look at it as my last company, my talent pool was Kalamazoo, Michigan. Great place. I love it. Great people here, but not every talented person lives in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Now we find the best people wherever they are, and, we've got the tools to bring them on and make them part of the team.
Yeah, absolutely. So I take it that your company and your business is completely remote, is it?
It is remote, and remote by choice. My last company was brick and mortar. And I just looked at this and thought, there's no way that I can say we're open 9 to 5 East Coast time unless it snows, right? The world doesn't operate that way, and our clients too, right? We've got clients around the world. We've also got podcasters around the world. So the idea that we're only going to be in an 8-hour or 9-hour time frame doesn't work. The other thing too is that the best people don't want to work those hours either. They want the flexibility. And I love that in our team, that work is what you do, not where you go. And I can think of a couple of years ago, I saw that one of our team members logged in on Easter Sunday and started scheduling emails to go out the next day. And I reached out to her and wished her a happy Easter. I'm like, you don't have to work today. And she's like, I want to work today, right? My kids are home from college. And right now they're over at their girlfriend's houses. My husband went to the nursing home to see his mom, right? So I've got like a 4-hour window here. And if I work now, that means I can take some time off during the week. And I'm like, that's great. So I think that gives a whole lot of flexibility. And once again, like I said, there's a lot of problems in the world, but there's no better time to be alive.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. I love it. I love that line. Work is not where you go, it's what you do. Is that what you said?
Work is what you do, not where you go.
Oh,
you think about that. And
that's good.
I live in southwestern Michigan. It's very agricultural and factory. And people always ask, where do you work at? Well, first of all, don't end sentences with a preposition. Now, that's one thing. But the other one is like, what do you mean, where do I work at? I think a better question is, what do you do? How do you serve people? How do you help them? How do you help them so much that they want to give you money? That's a more interesting question than what building do you go to show up and make a paycheck?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And when you're looking at from that frame, it's a frame of service and impact rather than I'm just here to do my job and then you give me a reward for my job like a robot, right? Yeah, very cool. I love it. That's awesome. I can only imagine how your team responds to your pep talks on Slack or however you communicate. I assume it's quite entertaining.
We try to do that, and it's so important for culture, right? To bring people together. So we do, we've got a private Facebook group where we chat in there. We do Zoom calls every couple of weeks. All the separate teams do a Zoom call each week, and what was it? I was at we go to a lot of physical meetings. Well, at least we used to, and we bring team members there. And I remember one of them was talking about they were using, I think it was Marco Polo or something like that, to talk to other people. And they're like, hey, do you want us to send that, to add you to this too? And I'm like, no, I got enough apps on my phone. You don't need to add me to that one. But they were talking to each other, and knew each other's families just from that.
Yeah, so cool, right? So cool. With technology nowadays, it's just, you can connect so quickly and just be right in somebody's life instantly. This morning, I was chatting with my wife. She's in Russia. We were FaceTiming. My parents came and said hello. What a time to be alive, right? It's just so, right. It's so cool. It's so cool. And then when you take it up a level and you're doing podcasting or whatever the media is called, you're actually exchanging value and giving out the knowledge that you've gained over your lifetime and capturing it. That's the one thing I love about podcasting. You're capturing the moment. That information is forever captured, recorded, and it's just there now. It's like a miniature book, an audio book. It's an audio book, and it's there forever. You can always go back and learn from that thing. I learn more from listening to my own podcasts than almost anything else, because when you're actually conducting one, you're sort of in the moment of like thinking about how the flow is going and your questions, and you're sort of a little bit out of it when you're the interviewer, right? I go back and re-listen to my episodes immediately after, and that's when I learn and take the most notes, just to tell you how I do it. And I find that extremely powerful, because I'm the one asking the questions I want to know the answers to, and I know my audience does too. That's the best part, right?
And we all learn differently. So I'm an Audible learner, right? I do much better showing up for class every day and listening to it, or going to the, we used to call them in the Navy gouge sessions the night before the test, than I would sitting there reading through the book. It's just how I learn. And, some people are Audible learners, so they'll listen to the book, right? I feel like I'm lying sometimes when I tell people, yeah, I listen, or I read about 1 to 2 books a week. I can't tell you the last time I read a physical book. Most of the time I'm listening to them at, 2x speed as I'm running at half x speed, but that's how I learn, and the same way you could take a podcast interview, transcribe it, and make a blog out of it. Somebody asked me one time, well, if 51% of the US population listens to podcasts now, when do you think it's going to be 100%? And I'm like, I don't know that radio or television ever got to 100%, right? 10% of the US population is hearing impaired. I don't care how good my interview is. People that are hearing impaired are not going to listen to it, but they might read the transcript. And, today we can create in the medium that's easiest for us, and then repurpose in the medium that's easiest for the person.
Yes, absolutely. So let's talk about that for a moment then, repurposing, right? Someone's out there, they're creating interviews, they're doing blogs, they're doing podcasts, they have all this stuff going on. Repurposing. So what do you recommend for people as far as repurposing goes? What do you advise podcasters to do? Because the people, some, you hear guys like Gary Vee, for example, he says, put as much content everywhere as you possibly can. And then I hear somebody else say, focus on what you're good at and just get very good at that one thing. And those are two drastically different opinions. What's your opinion?
My opinion is, make sure you're making the most use of the content you have. Content's a great thing, but if you're just writing this down on Post-it notes and putting it all over your office, it's not helping anybody. And I think a lot of times that's what we'll do. And I was guilty of it. I've been on over 1,200 podcast interviews. To me, the fun part is getting on the interview. Let's talk, let's answer it, all the rest of that. But then, are you promoting it once it goes live? Are you promoting it on all other social media? Are you getting those transcripts? And you don't have to do it yourself, but get a transcript. Have somebody else clean it up. We speak at, about 150 words a minute? So if you think about that, every 4 minutes is a blog. How many blogs could we write out of just our transcripts. Or some people want to see the words, or they want to see the video. How easy is it to do that? So to me, it's like create in the way that's easiest for you, and then repurpose in the way that's easiest for your customers. So, and today, once again, all it really takes is not a whole lot of time. You can throw a little bit of money at it and get, an AI transcription done. You can get somebody overseas to make even me sound like English is my first language and to clean it up. There's so many different ways you can do it. So I think often people are so focused on content, more, but they're not using what they have right now. So I'd say come up with a system to make sure that you get the most out of what you have, then ramp it up. If all of it is just going through the bucket, if the bucket has lots and lots of holes in it, doesn't matter how fast you're filling it up, how fast you're adding more content to it. It's not going to do any good. So come up with a system first, then scale your content.
Come up with a system first and scale your content. Yeah, beautiful. Love it. I need to work on my system. Sounds like, yeah. So very good. It's very good. I love hearing experienced guys talk about this stuff because, for people out there listening, all of these words can even be foreign to someone who's new to the game, right? Like, what do you mean transcript? What are you talking about? Like, at least for me, I was completely lost in the jargon of the whole thing, even at the beginning, right? And then as you start to learn, it's like anything. The more you learn, the more you don't know anything, right? Mm-hmm. So you learn something, you're like, oh my God, now I know. Oh, wait, there's way more to it now. The rabbit hole goes even deeper and even deeper. And that's when you can feel that overwhelm. And that's when you want to quit. That's when your why comes in. We can bring that all the way back to the whole reason you're doing it in the first place, right? That reason deeply.
The why, and the older I get, the more I realize there's a lot of things that are easy to do and hard to do well, right? So for me, I've written a lot of blogs in my life. Every one of them felt like a homework assignment. There are people that love to write. So if I can come up with the ideas and outline them and, give them bullet points, they'll write it and they'll have a great job doing it. The stuff will get out there. So I don't have to do every part. So I think a lot of times as an entrepreneur, we've got to ask, who should do this? Not how can I do this? Because when you talk about that, when you're working the 80-hour weeks, scaling doesn't mean to get 160 hours in. It's try to figure out how can I get this down to 40 by leveraging other people's skills and talents.
Yes, absolutely. Right. Surround yourself with people that are experts in their field, and you stay in your lane and produce what you produce, do what you do well, and let them do what they do well. When everyone's in their passion and everyone's focused on the thing that they're experts at, that's when you have a well-oiled business, right? Or anything in life. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So Interview Vault's come a long ways, I'm sure, since its conception. When did you say you started that?
We started test it in 2014, started to beta test in 2015, and then came out of beta in 2016. So we've got about 6 years of experience. We've had over 500 clients on 20,000 podcast interviews, and we're really a data company. So when I say this works, this doesn't work, it's not just my opinion. It's the customers, it's the experience telling us this is what works, this doesn't. And so we've really got a great system down that people can plug into. One of the things that I look back on nuclear power and people say, wow, that was amazing that you were able to run a nuclear power plant in your 20s. I'm like, no, the amazing part is that there were people that could come up with the systems so that mere mortals could run it, right? Most of the sailors in the Navy that are running the nuclear power plants I think the average age is like 22, and they're high school educated. Very smart, very motivated, great people, but they're not all, PhDs in physics. So I think that with the business too, more and more just realizing I've got to come up with the systems and processes so that we can scale this.
Yeah, that's a good call. I never thought about that. I never thought about that. That's interesting. Yeah, the system is the key, right? Somebody built it in a way that they could come in and run that thing, right? That's very cool.
Yeah, we've got core values for the company, and
Mm-hmm.
one of them used to be that our success is proportional to our service. And that was for about the first year and a half. And the more I looked at that is that we had people that were doing fantastic job. They were like Superman, right? They'd put on their capes, they'd jump tall buildings. And I'm like, this is not scalable. Service is great, but our success should be based on our systems. And that's when we really changed it and said, our success is based on our systems. Now, we still got awesome people that will do super work and jump over tall buildings for our clients, but they shouldn't have to do a magic trick every time to get the results. The results should come from the system.
That's big. That's big. That's big. That probably brings some clarity to the team atmosphere, and also some security, I guess, in your mind, understanding that the system is the thing that you're focused on rather than the magic tricks, because you can run out of magic, right? But the system is solid, no?
And from a management's perspective too, to look and say, if something fails, and it always does, right? We should always be stressing the system, trying to do more, trying to deliver more. So if something breaks down in there, a lot of times the first thing people will look at is the person. Well, they didn't do it, right? Well, no, what's the system? Is the system set up to help them? Is the database that we have? Can they get it on their desktop and their phone? All of those things. Is the system set up correctly? And then before you say it's the person, come back and go, well, you hired that person, you trained that person, so why don't you go back and look at your training process or your hiring process? Because I honestly believe that 99% of the world wants to do a great job. There's probably those less than 1% of psychopaths that want to go and mess things up. Most everybody wants to do a great job. It's just, as a business owner, are we given the opportunities to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that's very good. Now, as a business owner, and you're producing all these amazing opportunities for your network and providing an awesome service, which is very cool and very needed in this type of industry. Now, obviously, the more professional and the more interaction we can get with high-level people, the better, right? And that's what you're providing, which is very cool. On a personal level, you've been on countless podcasts. I'm sure you probably can't even remember the number. Actually, you're data-driven, so you probably do know the number. Have you seen a transformation happen personally, internally, to yourself over the years of being on the screens, being on microphones, chatting with people, interacting with people all the time, expressing your views openly, being vulnerable? Have you seen a personal transformation in yourself that possibly you did not expect?
Thanks for asking that question, Aaron. I don't know that I've ever been asked that one, or never really thought about it. Sometimes I think with the over 1,200 podcast interviews I've done, sometimes it's therapy, right? Asking those questions that's like, I should have thought about that. To me, I think the biggest thing has been public speaking. People have asked me over the years, and probably more in the latter parts of the interviews than when I first started out. They're like, well, where'd you learn how to do public speaking? And I've never considered myself a good public speaker. I did Toastmasters, and I was always the one that would win the award for the most uhs or the most ums. So technically, I'm not probably a great communicator. But I think the more you talk, the more you interview, the more you interact with people, the easier it is to tell stories. And so I think with that, I've become a better communicator. And I think as a leader, that is so important, because we can't do it all ourselves. So we better learn how to communicate and be comfortable with it, right? The first podcast I did, I probably wanted to get sick before it started. Right? It was so scary. The first video that I did was so scary. I probably took, 10 takes to get a 60-second video. But now I've gotten comfortable with it. So for me, it's easier just to record a quick video and send it to the team, or a quick video and text it to somebody, than it is for me to type something out. So I think the big thing there is just being more comfortable communicating both through video and through audio.
Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. And, as I was asking the question, I had an inkling that it would have to do with presenting, speaking, being in front of people, and actually having a clear message. Because myself, just in my short journey of been doing this, I'm finding that exactly what you said. I'm finding my mind is moving faster than my mouth. Whereas before, you'd almost stumble over your words and things. And clear communication is extremely important in all aspects of life, especially if you're managing teams and running businesses that are surrounded by interviews. Right? if you're running a company called the Interview Valet, obviously you're going to be an interviewing star, and then you're proving that point very well. So that's very cool. Okay, well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here on the Growth Podcast. I could talk to you for hours about this stuff. It's absolutely amazing. I thank you so much for coming on and dropping so much value for our listeners, especially the ones that are, considering podcasting or broadcasting in any fashion, or putting out content. Maybe they're shy about it, or maybe they're not sure the steps to take. And then again, for the other people that are listening that have shows, that are looking for quality guests, or that are guests, have books, have coaching programs that need to get out there, that people need to see these things, and they're doing a disservice by not reaching as many people as they possibly can. I'm just happy that there's guys like you and your company that can help bridge that gap and connect people the way that they deserve to be connected, so that they can all get the impact from each other. So thank you so much for being here and bringing your awesome energy, Tom. It's been a blast.
Well, thank you, Aaron. And I would say that anybody that says doing a podcast is easy has either never done it or never done it well. Only the great ones make it look easy. So here's my pitch. If you enjoy Aaron's podcast, if you enjoy all the content that he brings, take a few minutes, leave the rating and review. And if there's anything that I can do for you, you don't have to figure out what Tom Schwab in Kalamazoo, Michigan I am. You can just go to interviewvalet.com/growth podcast. And I'll put all my social media there. We mentioned the book. I sell a lot of the copies of the book. I give more away. If you want a free copy, I'll mail you one there. There's a assessment. Will podcast interview marketing work for me? And, if you want to talk and see how that we could help you, either with guests or as a host, I'll put my calendar link there too. So just go to interviewvalet.com/growth podcast.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Thanks again for being here, Tom. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Aaron.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. By the way, there's some people who want to build an online business, but sometimes are scared of scams or who to trust, or they begin and they just get lost in the daily task with no blueprint to follow, right? And because of that, they never get started and just end up staying in the same position year after year because time flies, So if you're thinking to yourself, there must be a way to create a predictable, stable income online, but you don't know where to start, I've got something you might enjoy. Head over to www.bjkugrowth.com. Watch a quick interview I had with my buddy. He's an 8-figure earner. His name is Bashar, and he gets into how he grew into a successful online entrepreneur and how he now is helping thousands of others do the same. You're gonna love it. I've seen so many lives changed just learning this valuable information from him. So it might just be what you're looking for. So go over to www.bjkugrowth.com. I'll see you there. And thanks again for tuning in and supporting the Growth Podcast.